One of my patients sneezed out his intestines. r/r credited by online comps. Serious police officers and nurses, what's the most fucked up thing you have seen on the job? Homeless person with an infected foot just came in last month. Foot was red and necrotic, dead tissue, little black holes everywhere. Poured some iodine and a few maggots came out. Another nurse suggested hydrogen peroxide, that hole bubbled, and 1000s of maggots came bursting out. I can't even describe the smell. Used to work at a naval hospital. Apparently artillery marines used to have this hazing tradition called kissing the breech. Essentially, the M777, 155 howitzer artillery guns, like any gun, have a massive recoil, and the new marines would put their face as close to the recoil as possible. Apparently, this was fairly common, but honestly I never heard of it again after this. So this good-looking 19-year-old boot actually kissed the breech. The gun recoiled and smacked him in the face. He transferred to our hospital one day after the incident, and it was the worst injury I have ever seen to this day. He somehow survived being hit in the face by the recoil of a round capable of traveling 25 miles. This thing weighs like 9,000 pounds and hit him in the face with literal cannon force. He makes it to hospital and I couldn't believe my eyes. He essentially had lost his entire face. No eyes, mouth, nose, chin. Nothing. A gaping hole with tubes and surgical dressings. I was part of a team responsible for stabilizing him and never heard the outcome, but I know he survived for quite some time. He may have made it back home. I hope he is still around. He had a great family around him, and the hardest part was seeing his mother holding pictures of her son before the incident happened. Heartbreaking. Mate, if I lose my face I definitely want to be put to sleep. I've seen a clip about a guy in a car crash. It was on Reddit, but marked NSFW. I thought, man, can't be that Bayo was in the back. The poor fuck had no jaw anymore. Everything below his eyes was just lumps of meat and blood. Straight out of a ducking horror movie. If that happened to me, fucking put me in a coma. If it can't be fixed, then send me off. Young girl in her 20s kidnapped and held captive for days. Every inch of her was bruised. They shaved her head and eyebrows off, burnt her, just some seriously fucked up stuff. Only found by chance. I don't want to imagine what would have happened if she wasn't. No family came to see her either. She was truly isolated and alone with no support. I think that just made it so much worse. One of my patients sneezed out his intestines. He had a hernia, so severe the skin had stretched to the breaking point, so all it took was a sudden increase in abdominal pressure and bam. Edit. To elaborate. He had had multiple surgeries to repair the hernia in the past that all failed. He came into the hospital looking like he had swallowed a basketball. The skin around his belly was very thin and damaged, so all it took was a sneeze to rip the skin and all of his bowels came shooting out. Not a single loop of bowel. Basically all of it, since he had little support in there at all to keep them in place. He survived the initial trauma, since evisceration is not as immediately fatal as it may look if the bowel is undamaged, but I think he had a very poor long-term prognosis. Was in the A young girl was brought in, beaten and messed up. She was alert and oriented though, and was fighting with paramedics and her staff about assessing her. Turns out she was only 12 or 13 years old, beaten by an uncle, and refused to say anything until her daddy showed up. Of course no one showed up, at least when I last checked at the end of my 12-hour shift. Things that happens to children are the most fucked up. I work in an operating room. Patient came in for surgery, was using a loaded gun as a sex toy up her rectum, and it went off as she was doing the deed. Shot through her abdomen. Yeah, I see some weird shit come through. Got a call of medical aid request. Male subject and chainsaw related injury. Showed up and found a male in the middle of the street, head in one place, body in another. Chainsaw still running. Guy had found out his wife was cheating on him with his own brother. Got drunk, put the chainsaw up to his throat. To show them a lesson, the chainsaw teeth caught his neck and just kept going. We have a frequent flyer who repeatedly comes in because she gets glass dildos stuck up her ass. She's already had to have emergency surgery twice because they break after she puts them in. She puts them in the freezer first. Guy convinced a friend to drill a hole in the back of his head because he read somewhere that it alters the flow of cerebrospinal fluid to give a permanent high without any drugs. Somehow worked out with no bad effects, except that he and the friend just left it open for like 2 weeks and the cut edges of his scalp started rotting. I could literally see into the inside of this dude's brain through the dime-size hole he had drilled. Not sure if penetrating the brain itself was intentional or not. But the goddamn shocking thing is that, except for the infection in his scalp, the guy was otherwise completely fine. Told me all about what he did in a totally coherent manner, and then extolled the virtues of drilling into your skull over taking drugs. Do you have any idea how long that hole stayed open? You'd think his brain would get infected, or shampoo would get in there or something. Yeesh. To be fair, doesn't sound like this guy was a shampoo type of person. So I have been a nurse for over 10 years and I have to be honest, so much of my experiences are not as gory or traumatic as so many others here, and never will be. But for me, and I know that some of you might understand, the most ducked up things I see, and will continue to see, is the horror of Alzheimer's, frontal temporal dementia, and Lewy body dementia. I tell you what, these PPL come in, and they are polite and confused, able to fake it sometimes. Maybe their families have cared for them at home for a long time. Within hours often they realize they aren't leaving, and the family is gone. The facade is over. They become mean and nasty often. Or the traumatic weight loss, the refusing to eat, the empty look in their eyes. Begging to be released from their shell of a body in their own personal hell. Unable to verbalize the pain or confusion or anything they feel. The families going through this is sad too. But what I was reminded of was when some of these folks do get sick, or break a hip, or poop themselves. The amount of people it often takes to help them, and clean them up, literally have to try to hold their hands down, because they do not understand what's going on no matter what. So yes, imagine 4 minutes and 10 seconds little old lady who is 90 some years old, in the shower, with 2 or 3 staff, because she's swinging and pissed off. But hasn't had a shower in over a week, and starts with diarrhea. One girl gets sick. So old lady grabs the poop and starts smearing it on her. Ends up standing on wet floor with other 2 gals in there trying to hold on to her and keep her off the floor and get her clean. Throwing handfuls of poo at the girls, the doorway, and the wall. And here comes our _popcorn RN knocking on the door in her dress clothes as the assistant director of nursing, trying to help people, and gets poo landed at feet. For me the most fucked up thing that I see as a nurse are loved ones that refuse to let their sick and miserable family members pass with dignity. I know losing a loved one is hard, been there, but instead of stopping treatment, they want us to continue doing everything possible for their 90-plus-year-old grandparent. We as medical professionals know that they aren't leaving the hospital or nursing home, and family are advised as such, but want us to continue full code status. This means doing CPR and breaking multiple bones when they code. It's a major holiday. CPR in progress. Medics come rushing through the door working on this cold toddler. Doctor calls it 20 minutes later. The inhuman screams from the mother were just the first part. The screams from the dad and his subsequent hospitalization from the shock were the second. The wails just never leave you. Had a faculty member of the college I work for have a heart attack on the stairs. Fell down and slid down an entire flight of about 30 steps on his face, each step breaking his nose slightly more than the last. His nose was basically flat, and he was pouring blood everywhere. Ike lost a few teeth too. I used the ED that was thankfully right there beside the stairwell before I had to do CPR on him, while trying not to get his blood in my mouth, for a whole 14 minutes before M/FD got on scene. Had an officer show up, and he just stood beside me and watched. He didn't attempt to provide any kind of first aid or CPR relief. After about 2 minutes of CPR, your efficiency drops significantly. I was doing it over 6 times as long. EMS finally arrived and rushed him to the emergency room, and thankfully the guy survived. By far, not the worst thing someone has dealt with in this line of work before, but it was traumatizing nonetheless. Ended up being honored with the first life-saving award the college has ever issued. I should also point out, I'm only a security guard, and I was only on the job for 2 months before this happened. Edit. Blown away by the positive feedback. Thank you all so much. Please like and subscribe for more videos. Comment your thoughts and hit the bell icon. Here is a picture of a dog reading after that sad story. Thanks for watching, and I hope you learned something new about life.